order. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I have the roll call?
Councilmember Ball.
Here.
Councilmember Snell. Here. Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Councilmember Valenzuela.
Here.
Councilmember Cervini.
Here.
Mayor Gordon.
Here. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. If there are no requests for any items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
A second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is council staff reports and announcements. I have several things here tonight for the council. First of all, included in your packet is the cardroom revenue report. It's the same report that was actually presented at the last city council meeting, with the exception it does have the 2 additional columns. If you could scroll down a little bit, please. Just the council members requested that we include both the effective tax rate and what the tax rate would have been at 10%. So we don't have any new information in terms of actual numbers, but we did include those 2 columns for the benefit of the council. I just want to remind everybody that the next Mayor's Town Hall meeting will be Wednesday, April 4th at 6:30 p.m. at the Public Works Building. It's open to everyone. It's an informal meeting, and I'd like to see everybody there. They've been great meetings. They're very informative for myself, and I think the people that attend get something out of each one of the meetings as well. So I always look forward to those meetings. We do have a representative from the Lions Club this evening that I think will be talking about the Lions breakfast, so I'll pass over that and leave it for Lions representative. There are 2 openings in the city on two commissions, one for the Planning Commission and one for the Civil Service Commission. The city is accepting applications right now for those positions. It'll close on Friday, March 30th at 5 p.m. So if anybody's interested in applying for either one of those 2 commissions, we'd love to get your applications. Also, there's a new listing. Chief Denny put an ad or included on the city website. There is a opening for the Police Advisory Commission. I'm just going to read this, Chief. The La Center Police Department is now accepting applications for the Police Advisory Commission. The La Center Police Advisory Commission is a volunteer group whose mission is to contribute their time and talents to promote public safety, serving as a liaison person between the community and the police department, and assist in educating our community for better understanding of the respective responsibilities of police and citizens. So the La Center Police Department will utilize the commission for the purpose of reviewing and making recommendations to the police chief on matters pertinent to the police department. So if anybody is interested in that, please submit your applications to the city. And all these positions are listed on the city website with addresses and contact information. Just a couple other things here. On Saturday, March 17th was the opening day for the La Center Little League baseball season. It was a great day. It was a lot of little kids that are playing Little League in the center. There's no doubt about it. To get good utilization out of our fields. I just want to thank the Public Works Department for the great job they do on the fields. It was, everything was in great shape. They do a phenomenal job, so I just want to mention the Public Works Department. Also, on Tuesday, March 20th, the city had an open house at the La Center Community Center. The open house, we discussed the roundabout construction. Tony Cooper, the city engineer, along with Steve Nelson, the design engineer from HHPR, did a presentation. There were 2 sessions, one at 4 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock. The 4 o'clock session was well attended. The 6 o'clock session, not so much. But I think Tony did a real good job of talking about the different phasing of the project. I know people are anxious for more information on how that's going to take place. On the agenda this evening is if the council decides to award the contract to the low bidder, that'll take place this evening. After that's awarded, then the contractor will be meeting with the city, and we'll get a better feel for what exactly the phasing part of that project will be. So there'll be more information forthcoming on that project, especially with regards to what the impacts are going to be. But and as we get that information, it'll be posted on the city website, and we'll try to include it in the sewer bill flyers and what have you. But we'll try to push out as much information on that as we can. Let's see, on Monday, March 26th, I attended a fireworks stakeholder meeting at the Board of County Commissioners. It was actually a very good meeting. It was attended by, City of Ridgefield, county councilors, county staff, fire marshals. There were actually quite a few vendors there that sell fireworks. City of Vancouver was also represented there, as well as City of Washougal. And it's just a discussion that the cities and the county are having to address some of the issues that we're all experiencing with fireworks. You know, some of the discussion topics we had were dates for firework use, dates for firework sales, types of devices that are being sold, and you know, some of the other issues that pertain to fireworks in the 4th of July. Councilmember Balf is actually the representative from the center that was going to attend the meeting, but he was unable to attend, so I filled in for him. And there'll be another meeting probably within the next 2 weeks to follow up on it. So I'm glad we're participating in it, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I think that's pretty much all I had for this evening. Well, I did also attend with 3 of the planning commissioners on Monday a short course on local planning. The 3 planning commissioners that attended were Dennis Nutbrock, Dinah McLean, who's the chairperson for the Planning Commission, and Jeremy Smith was also there. So it was a great course. It lasted for about 3 hours. Covered basically the legal basis for planning in Washington, comprehensive planning basics, roles and responsibilities, and local land use planning. So I was really happy that 3 of the planning commissioners were there, and it was a great course. So that's all I have this evening. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. That's pretty much it. So next on the agenda is the attorney's report, and Mr. Cairns.
Thank you. The city has 2 active pieces of litigation going right now, both related to land use, and they're both kind of humming along, and one at least is very long standing. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to give kind of an update, and especially for the new counselors to kind of bring you up to speed on the history of these things. First of all, how many of you have served on the Planning Commission over the years? It's not too late. Well, for the first time in the city's history since when I was first hired, when Liz was mayor, we did have our first land use appeal. So the council did have its first quasi-judicial land use matter with Riverside Estates appeal that came up at the end of, was it last month, in December. It's very likely you'll have a taste of that it will come back for readjustment, and I'll explain that a little bit. But let me go to the oldest one of these cases that's pending right now. And the history of these things matters to your understanding and kind of the city's political and growth ideas over time, because when it comes right down to it, everything you do is land use, and land use is a very important urban development, a political tool that the council has. And the city has exercised that power over the years to varying degrees, depending upon what it as a political body wanted to do. So I remember when Liz was mayor, the big push occasionally was to expand the city's boundaries across the river. And so that was sort of like the DMZ. And I know during Liz's term as mayor, he tried several times, and it was always shot down at the county planning commission level. Now understand, all the cities within the county, all the cities in that plan in GMA counties around the state, the way the program works is designed fundamentally to protect resource land for resource uses, ag land and forest land for ag uses and forest uses. So the other side of that coin, though, is to contain urban development within urban growth boundaries, and ultimately urban services within city limits. So you've got kind of this matrix of resource land with these donuts. The donuts, the outer shell of the donut being the urban growth boundary, and within that the city limits. State law requires all cities to be contained within urban growth boundaries, urban growth areas. And the idea of that buffer, that donut around the city, is that's the land that the county, consistent with GMA, consistent with its comprehensive plan, deems to be available and appropriate for urban development over the 20-year planning horizon. So within that 20 years, the city will expand to eat up the donut, in theory. Every 5 years, counties have the opportunity to reassess things, rejigger things, and during that periodic GMA update, and that's how I'll refer to it, cities will go to counties and advocate for certain kinds of expansions of their urban growth areas because of perceived or hoped for manifest destiny type ambitions. They want to grow for different reasons. And the thing that they have to show in order to justify to a county to expand, on the surface, they have to make their arguments based on state law, on the Growth Management Act, that these lands that they want to expand their urban growth boundary into are not really ag lands because of a number of reasons. They could be devoted to non-ag uses, they could be in proximity to urban development, so you have to demonstrate that the land that you want to go into is appropriate for expansion of urban areas over the 20-year planning horizon. You also have to show that within your boundaries, within your city, that you have a need for this. You have to justify it in terms of, documented, demonstrable population growth, job growth, something that would justify this sort of expansion. It can't be, gosh, the economy is really bad and we would like to build a casino or something like that. That would generate some economic engine. That is not something that state law really recognizes as an argument. So during those years when Liz was mayor and the city would make these attempts, they always seemed to die at the County Planning Commission level and were never advanced to the Board of County Commissioners as part of that countywide package of expansions, urban UGA expansions. And then finally, I think it was during Jim Irish's administration where, I think it was, I have a hard time recalling where this strong push fell relative to Cowlitz tribe coming to the city and proposing this pretty big economic engine of urban development outside the city limits, way outside the city's urban growth boundary, 2 miles distant from this urban growth boundary. But in any event, the city eventually pushed across the river and took in the Timon Road area. And then, in the context of that larger development proposal out of the junction, did what we have, this kind of long, skinny extension out the road to the junction. And I got to tell you, the Washington Growth Management Act is very similar to Oregon's, and both states have encountered a big problem when it comes to freeway interchanges, because typically they go across resource land got to have resource uses there. You can't have urban development on resource land. But they provide at these junctions these nodes of urban development. And so it's a real conflict. That how do you allow these expansions, how do you allow the establishment of urban development on resource land just because of this transportation facility? But all of you have seen this. I mean, just casual observers driving across the countryside, you see how urban development, truck stops are urban development. You know, the collection of commercial uses that's urban development, urban types and urban densities of development. And they typically come with some kind of urban services, water and sewer. Usually, if it's in the middle of nowhere, on-site septic. And in our case now, we have the opportunity, the sewer line goes out there. It's a urban facility provided by the city of the center. So the two states have wrestled with this problem, dealt with it in different ways. And to my, in my estimation, Washington has not dealt with it. That it has, we've had a difficult time, I'll tell you, justifying the city's urban expansion, urban growth boundary expansion at its junction. Based on this well-documented, ginormous piece of urban development that is totally outside of growth management, is not subject to state law, the tribes, because you know. So last time we had an appeal hearing with the Growth Management Board, they were looking around for a place to hold a hearing. I said, I'm sure that the conference room at the casino is ready. Just to kind of drive home the point that it's there, it's real. The previous urban growth expansion, that the big one under Jim Irish's administration, was a huge, very aggressive expansion that if you're familiar with where the urban growth area is now and the city limits out at the junction, he had proposed a massive expansion south of La Center Road, an expansion across the freeway, both in north and south quadrants. I had suggested that we approach the tribe and see if they were interested in joining in and petitioning the county to expand our urban growth area to include the tribal reservation. There's no reason we couldn't do that. At the end of the day, the Growth Management Hearings Board, during that GMA update, invalidated everything but the northeast corner that you saw. And so that was allowed to come in. And in this last GMA update, there were various appeals. Various numbers of cities were involved in that appeal, in that go-round. And significant issue for us going forward in the current litigation that we have, City of Ridgefield at that time had annexed a bunch of their urban growth area that in that previous GMA update had been expanded. So during the pendency of that GMA appeal, these kinds of legislative enactments are appealed to the Growth Management Hearings Board. Those are the decisions they hear. Permit decisions go to Superior Court. So it was pending at the Growth Management Hearings Board. During the pendency, they annexed the land. And the main petitioner in that case was a local group of land use advocates, but they were also supported by the statewide group. It used to be Thousand Friends of Washington, now it's known as FutureWise. And they do play a very important role in kind of watchdogging the local government compliance with the statewide program. Sometimes they get a little aggressive, a little advancing statewide objectives, oblivious to local issues and the facts of a local case. But in any event, they were part of that appeal. It was annexed during the pendency of that appeal. And there wasn't a big objection by FutureWise at the time to that, but the Growth Management Hearings Board objected to that to a certain extent. And the Court of Appeals, too, when it made it to the Court of Appeals, it thought that this was some sort of sleazy maneuver, that the land was annexed to the City of Ridgefield during the pendency of this appeal that could have invalidated that UGA expansion. That was an issue that no one argued. It wasn't even an issue that FutureWise brought up. And so the county and Ridgefield took that to the state Supreme Court and got a very strong, pretty strong opinion that, you know, state statutes governing annexation were followed, and once land is annexed to come within a city, it is beyond the growth board's jurisdiction and authority to craft a remedy at all. Because the dynamic of these appeals are petitioners, in this case it was the local group in FutureWise versus Clark County. The cities were, not named parties. We intervened on the side of the county, but it was petitioners versus county. Growth Board, when it crafts a remedy on the county. It's an appeal of the county's decision. Once the land is within a city, they're not a respondent to this thing, and it really is, under state law, beyond the Growth Board's authority to impose a remedy on a city. So that's the case law that came out. The last time we weren't really part of that battle. We were just, as we say, along for the ride, and we ended up with the expansion at the junction that we had 6 months ago. Come forward, the last GMA update the county did, I think they completed it in 2015, 2000. Their final decision came out in June of 2016. And it, same as before, affected a bunch of the cities, expanded their growth boundaries to differing degrees for differing reasons, political as well as land use and ag issues. Really aren't any forest issues for most of us. Ridgefield had what I would regard as a massive UGA expansion. City of La Center's 53 acres, something like that, pretty modest. And if you've been through the junction recently, or been through the junction in the past 6 months, you'll have noticed the proliferation of urban development at the junction in the form of transportation facilities, mainly the expansion of the sewer system, provision of water, upgraded power, and someday soon you'll see actual development. So based on the big surprise giant casino across the freeway, the development that it had caused, the transportation improvements that it had paid for and caused, the urban services that it had pulled up to the junction, and kind of the proximity of the land that we requested, this 53 acres, the argument we made is that, number one, doesn't qualify as ag land, it's not under ag use, and it's immediately adjacent to urban and urbanizing land and all these other aspects. So that was our pitch to the county. It was, in my view, a modest, very reasonable, very justifiable request, kind of as opposed to the previous, I think 800 some odd acres, very big request last time. This time it was very justifiable. And it was like World War III with this request. And FutureWise and a different group of local constituents appealed it. The center was a target, wasn't the primary target. But they definitely challenged the expansion that the county approved for the city, saying that it wasn't justified, this is ag land, that the city can't just, it's ag land so it shouldn't go there, expansion shouldn't go there. It isn't justified because of growth projections, documented growth projections of the city. The FutureWise characterized our need as a need for residential land. I mean, for those of you who have been on the Planning Commission, you know this is not zoned or planned for residential development. Anyone who drives through there knows it's not. So what was driving that was the county adopted jobs to residents ratio that was adopted and unchallenged, and given the residential population of the city, the projected job generating area that was needed to correspond to that residential land was about 53 acres. It's not huge, it's modest. So we thought we had a very good case. And so the decision was made in June of 2016. Within the appeal period, FutureWise and the rest appealed the entire county decision. All the many city UGA expansions went to the Growth Board, massive briefing on this, and you could tell that the FutureWise was on to the annexation issue kind of during this appeal. But before the briefing happened, and I would say 10 minutes after the ink was dry on the county's decision, the city received a request to annex. And shortly thereafter, the city of La Center annexed all the land that was part of its UGA expansion. And I'll tell you right now, the rest is history. Ridgefield didn't do it so quickly. The property owners there waited, and it took a long time. when the annexation request came in, FutureWise participated in the annexation and they appealed it. They didn't participate in ours, they didn't appeal ours. The annexation of our 53 acres is done. It was briefed heavily at the Growth Board. FutureWise was all over this issue, saying, and this is part of their statewide campaign, because there's nothing in the annexation laws that prohibits this kind of annexation while GMA appeals are pending, and there's nothing in GMA that says anything about it either. These are two different statutes, and basically this is kind of a statewide campaign by FutureWise to get a legislative change to deal with this question, which they characterized basically as a sleazy maneuver of cities and developers to circumvent the state land use laws. You know, I'll tell you, as your city attorney, you received a annexation request. It was deemed complete. You're required to respond to these things. You decide whether to annex or not. You had already decided to expand the UGA. So guess what? You approved that annexation request that came in, I'll tell you, darn quick after the decision was made by the county. So we followed state law. It went according to the way it was supposed to. And in my view, you had no choice but to process it. You could have decided to not annex the land, but you justifiably annexed it. No one challenged it, so it's done. And my view, based on well-established case law, including the Supreme Court's decision from the last time around, is that the Growth Board lacks the authority to craft a remedy here. It just can't. If there's going to be a remedy to be had, the legislature has to change state law to do it. So what we had out of the Growth Board this time around, and this came out March of 2017, a pretty big opinion, 100 pages. They go through this, they acknowledge the annexation, and at the end in their findings they say La Center and Ridgefield claim to have annexed the de-designated agricultural lands of long-term significance that were part of the newly enlarged urban growth areas. It was long done by the time this decision came out. It was more than a claim. It happened. It was an actual fact. And the Growth Board didn't really acknowledge the case law out there. There are many opinions from the Growth Board that do acknowledge that we lack the authority to craft a remedy to address this issue is outside of our control. And they say that. In this case, they didn't. All they talked about was the various merits and demerits of the county's decision to designate that ag land and then to incorporate it within our urban growth area. And they found that it wasn't justified.
What were our arguments there? What were our arguments there? Did we get up and argue that?
Oh, yes. We papered the file. We had a huge documentation on how it is not ag land and how the jobs to residential land justified this expansion. Again, it's not ginormous. It's not the state of Iowa. It's 53 acres. And so we had multiple consultants on this. All the cities did this as well, and the property owners involved chipped in to the cost of those consultants. So it wasn't just Eric Eisman standing up there saying it's a good idea. We had agricultural consultants who looked at the agricultural potential, the ag use of this land, yada yada, the proximity to urban development. Guess what? There's a giant casino here, and previously the casino hadn't been built. It was still under appeal through the federal court system in Washington, D.C. And I remember the Growth Board and the Court of Appeals said, the decision by the BIA had been made, but it's under appeal. Anything could happen. This time it was beyond appeal. It had survived the appeals by the time this hit the Growth Board. It was a reality. A legal reality. Granted, the request for U.S. Supreme Court review was still pending, but I think even before, shortly after this, by the time that this was headed to the Court of Appeals, that the Supreme Court had denied review. So it was the final last gasp that could undo the BIA decision and approve this. And if you recall, even before the dust was settled on all of those appeals in Washington, they were building. And so that was partly why I thought it was important to, the reality, the facts on the land were important for the Growth Board to know. Because what they see in these appeals, it's an administrative agency that performs this appellate review. All they see is the brief from each side, all the various parties, and the record. And record in this case is ginormous. They don't see the land generally. They don't really know what's on the ground. They look at this mountain, and this was, I don't know how many binders, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of pages in this record from Clark County. These are massive decisions. I mean, in Oregon, we don't see adjudicated decisions like this. This is mammoth. And so I thought it was important when they held the hearing that at least they had to drive by the casino to get to Vancouver, or to the center where the hearing was held. So the nickel clicked in at some point, but it isn't really reflected in their decision. So the county and the cities all appealed this, and the FutureWise appealed as well for the few points that it lost on. Actually, it was just the cities and the county who appealed, but FutureWise defended. And so the Growth Board ruled against the county, basically ruled against the city. And these decisions are appealable to Superior Court for some bizarre reason. It's a trial court proceeding. Trial court judges really don't feel comfortable doing these appellate type reviews. Judges like to do judge things and call winners and losers and do it relatively quickly. Last time we sought expedited review to the Court of Appeals, just skip the Superior Court proceeding altogether. For some bizarre reason, the statute is set up so the Growth Management Hearings Board gets to veto that request. They vetoed it last time. This time they approved to send it directly to the Court of Appeals. So they got sent to the Court of Appeals, these many appeals consolidated. The other thing that GMA requires is that within 6 months the county has to report back. All right, county, you were ordered to fix this problem. We sent this decision back to you. What are you doing? What have you done to address the Growth Board's order here? And so the county, we had a hearing back in November. The county and the cities appeared before the Growth Board, and basically the Growth Board said, you're still out of compliance. Not good enough. You haven't done anything, and reiterated many of the points from its original order in a subsequent order, which is much shorter, a mere 30 pages. So that also has a lot of the same issues, the same legal rulings, and that came out in January of this year. So what we've done, all of us chickens have appealed this, again have to go through Superior Court. Again, we requested expedited review to the Court of Appeals. The plan was to consolidate the appeal of the compliance order with the underlying appeal of the underlying order. So those motions were lodged. We also need to extend out the briefing schedule. So one of the orders you have in your packet tonight is the Court of Appeals granting the request to extend the briefing schedule to allow all these stars to align. Opening briefs are due July 31st. That should be a very doable date. And also we requested, as I mentioned, expedited review of the compliance order. The Growth Board agreed to that, so that also will be head up there, also will get consolidated. It should happen in the same briefing schedule. And our issue is sort of an odd thing because, from my perspective, if you just take the Growth Board's order, what it deals with, what it directs the county to do with regard to the center's urban growth area, it invalidates it, says it improperly de-designated that ag land at the junction of 53 acres and improperly expanded the city's growth area. It still can't craft a remedy. There's no way the county can comply with this because we've annexed it. And state law is very clear that cities must be contained within an urban growth area. So if the county were to somehow de-designate this and roll back our urban growth area, it would violate state law because it would have the city of La Center outside of its urban growth area. And that can't be. And so this is all kind of pitched to the Court of Appeals to resolve. What I see in this is the Growth Management Hearings Board saying, we agree with the FutureWise that this is kind of a problem in state law. We're going to stamp our little feet until it gets statewide attention that this is a big issue. Prior decisions by the Growth Board didn't express it that way, didn't express this kind of frustration, and just kind of forced this conflict that's apparent in this decision. It did this time. So we'll get, I guess, another decision by the Court of Appeals as to whether the Growth Board has the authority to craft a remedy for lands that have been annexed in this kind of context. And maybe, if I were thinking for future-wise, litigate this, lose, they'll go down to claims, and based on that, go to the legislature, say this illustrates the extreme problem, this conflict in state law. You need to either fix GMA or fix the annexation statute, but this illustrates the severity of the problem, legislature. I don't know if they'll have any effect. It's very difficult to get a majority to amend the Growth Management Act in any significant way. The only thing tougher than adopting it in the first place is messing with it.
What's the practical impact for the 53 acres? If I was an investor, I wouldn't want to invest in it because it's tied up in legal. Is that what?
Yeah.
We just have to sit on our hands,
that's a reasonable
or
response for investors, and they'll probably wait to see what this Court of Appeals does. Could be.
so we can't just do like the tribe did and just say, okay, let's go ahead and develop this. Put in a road and.
It's not the city's land. We don't develop it. But we have put urban facilities up there.
That's what I'm getting at. I mean,
We've zoned it. We've
we did
planned
a plan. We did a plan for it.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like
It's
we
zoned.
could start lay out a city street and.
What more can the city do? So that's a lot. I'll tell you that's a lot. Cities provide urban services, and by that way, by zoning and urban services, you shape your urban form and you affect development or not. It's a very important tool, and you've exercised that tool as much as you can. There is, as you can all figure out, kind of a legal question here that, if this gets briefed this summer, it'll be argued maybe by Christmas. We'll get a decision next year, and it may go to the Supreme Court. So.
But as you said, Dan, having the utilities and everything already there, it makes it a much stronger position for the city when it's being reviewed by others. So I think that's a positive for the city in this particular instance.
And the Growth Management Board, in issuing this kind of, to a certain extent, political decision to really heighten and highlight that conflict in law, they had the luxury of ignoring the reality on the ground. Well, the reality on the ground has changed quite a bit from when this was argued, and even at that point, there was massive movement by the tribe to build that casino, and so at this point, we've done everything we can to make it clear to the Court of Appeals that the horse has left the barn, that this casino is up and running. The interchange has been totally reconstructed at great expense to the tribe, and that the city has replanned and rezoned this land after it was annexed and has provided these important, expensive urban services to support urban types of development and urban densities of development. And you cannot ignore that. And I don't think they'll be able to. And again, it goes back to that issue that isn't really dealt with very well in the Growth Management Act, are these nodes of urban development along transportation corridors that go through what's otherwise resource land. You cannot ignore that fact. You can't just say, this must be farmed. It just defies reality. So,
what do you suggest? You're active in planning in both states. What do you suggest? Do we try to get together with a lobbyist and try to do, because this is going to have to be resolved at the state level?
Maybe. I mean, the law's pretty clear right now. What happened here is perfectly consistent with state law. The urban growth area was expanded. 10 minutes later, we got an annexation request. You processed it. You approved it. You didn't do it in a super expedited way. You did it in a normal fashion. You held a hearing. There was notice given. FutureWise showed up at Ridgefields and they participated and they've appealed Ridgefield's annexation. They didn't do that to La Center. So we're kind of, in this appeal that's going to the Court of Appeals, we're sort of in a different factual setting than Ridgefield. We're in a better position in that sense. But, from my perspective, if I were an opponent, wanted to jam the sticks in the spokes of this annexation, I would have shown up, I would have opposed it, and I would have appealed it. That would be the remedy. And maybe seek a stay of the county, the effect of the county's decision pending the Growth Management Hearings Board proceeding. No one asked for that.
Is from our perspective as counselors, is there a political way for us to go to FutureWise and say, look, this, we followed all, is there some way to argue that to them to get us to get out of the thing, to drop us out?
You won't be dropped out. I mean, we're there to see what happens. It's not, the entirety of the UGA expansion has now been annexed. There's no way in state law to unannex it. So
it's frustrating from a political perspective because we're making a huge investment up there and our hands are tied. It just seems like there should be some strategy to.
Just be patient, Joe. Just be patient. Because the gears of justice. Now you know what I mean when they grind slowly. And this is a statewide issue. We're sort of a pawn in this larger battle, and golly, it would be very interesting and useful to resolve this conflict in state law, because it could arise again maybe for my city, my client, La Center in the future. But for now, in this case, the law is settled. The Growth Management Hearings Board, they avoided addressing the legal reality in our context. It still is the legal reality, and I assume that the Court of Appeals will make note of that and recognize that. They didn't the last time, and the Supreme Court told them how to do it. So, we see how it goes. We see how that larger battle goes in the state. And I don't know which way, the way it would work is that in the next legislative session, FutureWise would get some legislator to propose a bill that would prohibit annexations of land in recently expanded urban growth areas while an appeal is pending at the Growth Management Hearings Board. Something like that. I think AWC would oppose it, lobby against it. My advice would be to support that. But I'll tell you also as an observer over the long term, and I think Liz has been too, of the growth management along the I-5 corridor here. In the last two GMA updates, Ridgefield have had massive, massive expansions. And the first time around, it was, undeniably indefensible, but they were able to placate the opponents, and there was no appeal, no challenge to it. Your competitor the competitor for the developers, for the property owners at this junction, the competitors are at the Ridgefield junction. So today, at this moment, I can't say which way I would advise you to lobby on such a bill. It would be bad for the city of La Center if it wanted to, repeat what it did this last go-around. But also, if your competitor for this kind of development market is Ridgefield, and Ridgefield has, used this, what FutureWise referred to as a sleazy maneuver, twice now, much bigger annexations, much bigger growth area, you're going to be outgunned in the market. And so something like this legislation might not be a bad idea. See what I mean? So I can't say in the abstract what I would recommend you go for, but that's where we are in this case today with this expansion area. Briefs are due July 31st.
That future legislation you mentioned wouldn't have any effect on our. It's done. That's done.
Done. D-U-N, done.
Thank you, Dan.
Litigation number 2. Riverside Estates. You remember it was sort of a knockdown, drag-out hearing before you in December, was that? December. Dennis Nutbrock was the primary opponent. and his neighborhood his homeowners group has appealed it. The developer, thank goodness, got a lawyer, and so they're represented by Steve Hornstein, the land use lawyer of choice. He represents the developer in this case. Jamie Housley at the Lander Home firm, and also a very well-experienced land use lawyer, represents Dennis's neighbors. The issues, if you recall, the hearing before you was all about this beveling thing and the mistake in the annexation ordinance that consumed all the oxygen in the room. It's not an issue in this appeal at all. The issue in this appeal is basically this neighborhood group's easement over Larson Road. It's a 60-foot wide easement. The right-of-way that they have to develop and build as a street, I think it's like 30 feet, 28 feet. So in theory, these homeowners have the property right to continue driving their cars over the front yards of these lots off the street and through their landscaping, in theory. There's that. They also they're not happy with where their access point onto the highway, onto Pacific Highway, has been and will be changed from. So they're not happy about that. And there's also a location of a sewer pump station that they want moved. So those are the primary issues. And it may be possible, what the developer wants to do is reconfigure the phasing line so they can proceed with all the phases except the one with Larson Road, and then work, while that's happening, work with Mr. Nutbrock and his lawyer to figure out a solution to this. From my perspective, as the city's attorney, I don't really care, so long as the city's street standards and intersection spacing standards are complied with. Their beef over the easement width versus the right-of-way width that was required, that's a property issue. They'll have to fight it out. The developer cannot go to final plat until all those who hold an interest, an ownership interest in the rights-of-way have signed off on the final plat. So guess what? It's not going to happen if Nutbrock's neighbors are not happy with the solution to this. That phase will not go to final plat. So I assume there's some solution possible here, and I'll participate just to ensure that, I'll keep Tony involved since he's sort of the keeper of our street standards and intersection spacing standards. It also involves Highland Terrace, by the way, which is across the highway. They had preliminary plat approval 10 years ago. They've been extended because of the recession. Who knows when they'll ever go to final plat, but their preliminary plat has their main access point opposite the current Larson Road access point. So that's a complicating factor. Someone's going to have to revise their preliminary plat, either this development or Highland Terrace. And that's why I say this could very well come back to you for an enactment of the final solution on this development or Highland Terrace. I just don't know how it's going to shake out. So we have that's in Superior Court, because appeals of land use permits go to Superior Court, not the Growth Board. And so we have a scheduling conference April 11th. But we've already met with us, lawyers have met once already, and we figured out, what are the various players that have to get involved and figure this out. And so we've reached out to the developer for Highland Terrace as well. Any questions about that one? It'll change, and it eventually will have to come back to you, I think. Certainly, they also want to proceed with this changing of the phasing lines, and we'll do that through a public land use process. It'll be what we call a Type 2 notice and comment, and my expectation is that anyone who cares or would comment on it is in agreement with it. So it is not going to be contested, that the change in the phasing lines can go ahead to allow the parties to discuss this Larson Road issue. And the phasing line adjustment probably won't come before you. Any other questions? And that's it. It's that simple.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Terrence. Are there any other questions? So after that, I'm sure everybody here this evening will be anxious to put an application in for the La Center Planning Commission.
Step right up.
Okay, next on the agenda is council comments. Councilmember Balf,
I have nothing tonight, Mayor.
Councilmember Stimmel,
I have nothing as well.
Councilmember Williams.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one thing. Remember, spring break's next week. Watch the kids. They'll be on the road doing dumb things. So, well, hopefully not dumb things, but you never know. Anyway, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Valenzuela.
Just a reminder to council people, if you guys read your stuff there, AWC is going to meet down the road, Kalama, on the 26th, on the 24th. So those are a chance for all the local officials to get together and talk about what issues are at the state. And so it's going to be at 5 to 8 o'clock, and it's just right down the road to Kalama. So if anybody can attend it, I'd certainly suggest it. And then the annual conference, that's in Yakima on June the 26th through the 29th.
See all your friends.
Yeah, if I'm still on. So I would just encourage, especially the new counselors, to consider the Yakima Conference too. There's so many things you learn at those conferences. I don't know if you've been to any of them yet, but they're amazing. The AWC does excellent work putting them together, and I would certainly encourage you guys to try to get to them. All of us get to them. Too many contacts there to not be involved with that. And the courses are always good too.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Cerveny.
I would like to wish everyone a joyful Easter and thank the Lions for everything that they do to make it a wonderful experience for the kids and the families. And I'd also like to extend my appreciation for Councilmember Stimmel and his wife and all that you do for the Little League. It was a wonderful experience being there and seeing the excitement and energy with the kids, and all that you're teaching them, you know, the integrity and the values. It was very clear and evident, and it was a great Saturday. Thanks.
You missed the screaming in the dugout.
Great. Thank you. Next, we have on the agenda our staff reports. This evening, in your packets, there is a staff report from our human resource consultant, Janice Corbin. If you could pull that up, please. Ms. Corbin is here this evening. If anybody has any questions for her, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them.
Did yours come up? Mine didn't come up.
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you.
And then also Chief Danny has a report that he included in the packet as well. Chief is here this evening. If he has any questions for the chief, he's available.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Little background on that. I was asked at the last meeting about whether the impact of the casino had on the center and our call load. And this by no means indicates that we have an impact because of the Alani Resort. That's just anecdotal. These are the numbers, you know, for the prior year and for last year, and then of course the numbers for the casino, the Alani Resort. There was 493 calls for service to the Alani Resort by the county sheriff's office. So obviously there's a lot of different reasons why our numbers are higher, you know, but you can see there's a lot of incidents there where we were assisting other agencies a lot more this year, or than the prior year. So
Mutual aid.
mutual aid.
I've noticed a number of times going by there seems to be always some activity there at the Shell station. It seems like there's blue lights going way more than they used to.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about? People are
Yes.
getting pulled off in there?
We're getting a lot more requests for assistance from state, from county, from, but not on the resort. We don't have an agreement in place yet with the Alani Resort or a mutual aid agreement, so we've been down that path numerous times and still no agreement to date. So
I haven't heard anything for 6 months. We've drafted this thing multiple times, multiple ways.
Talk about that at our monthly meeting.
Yeah. I'm at a loss to explain why the tribe isn't interested. My recommendation is that our officers do not go on a reservation without indemnification and authority. And the state mutual aid statute doesn't cover tribal entities. We have mutual aid with the county and the other cities, but this is like going to Canada, basically. That it doesn't fall under the normal state law authority.
One development that has happened up there, though, I think we need to mention, is that the tribe, they do have their own police chief along with 4 full-time police officers or law enforcement officials now. So they have designated one of their portables as a police department, and yeah, so they have definitely staffed up.
I would think that would make it easier for us to
Yeah.
interface and engage with the tribal police force. So I'm hopeful that they'll open up the conversation again.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Next on the agenda, we have citizens' public comment. If anybody would like to address the council, please step up to the podium and give us your name and address. And if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes.
3?
3. Go now.
What if I got 2 hats? All right. First of all, some people have already, Andy, Sheriff Taylor, 1414 East 4th Circle, Parkside Estates. First hat is, yes, there is a Lions breakfast and Easter egg hunt this Saturday. Breakfast starts at 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock. Easter egg hunt starts at 10 o'clock till 4 minutes after 10. We had over 5,000 eggs again this year, and it takes less than 4 minutes. The other hat, I was involved in a fundraiser last weekend for the teen center here in La Center. And we had a concert in Richfield at the Liberty Theater, and we netted over $1,500 for the teen center. So
Wonderful.
that's a good thing. So come out for breakfast. Ken Viles is going to be cooking his bunny pancakes. So come on out and join us.
Thank you.
Nelda Perryman, 824 East Pioneer Loop, the center. Mayor, council, and citizens. I have to read this. So, here we go. My first remarks are addressed to Council Member Valenzuela. It is my understanding that you told a La Center citizen that Finance Director Suzanne Levis went to former Mayor Jim Irish's deathbed, where he went to have his cancer surgery, and coerced him into signing a new employment contract, and that would make her being fired less easy. I have spoken to that person as well as Mayor Irish, who will back me up on this, and that is a malicious lie. Shame on you for spreading a false rumor. Did you come up with this on your own, or did Mayor Thornton talk you into it? Mayor Thornton, you have been the doom and gloom person saying that the ALNA will be devastating to our local card rooms. You even got the council to reduce the cardroom taxes. However, over the last few months, you have spent around $40,000 on a private investigator to try to find a cause for you to fire finance directors Suzanne Levis. How do you justify that? The private investigator did not even contact Mayor Irish, who worked with Suzanne for over a decade. Common sense would tell you that he would be able to give a knowledgeable assessment of her capabilities or lack thereof. She has an unprecedented success rate on the audit that she has had performed on the financial documentations of the city. Please share with the citizens of the center what motive is behind this ridiculous expenditure. Please, I beg of you, stop this vendetta and quit spending tens of thousands of dollars that sometime in the future could end up being very, very costly to the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Well, I feel like I'm a parrot here. Mayor, council members, citizens, my name is Joe Woodage, 34102 Northeast 14th Avenue, the Center. I got to tell you, I listened to that and I think I'm just seconding that motion. I recognize incompetence and a con job in this entire fiasco that we call a city government. I'm just going to run through a few items that I've listed here. The tens of thousands of dollars you've wasted on the attempt to privatize the sewer system. The investigation of the city finance director, tens of thousands of dollars, not once but twice. And the private investigator who apparently is still working. The laying off of said finance director with pay seemed like a silly thing to do. You changed the benefit package for the new hire at the sewer system. Is this going to make your argument for privatization more palatable the next time you present it? I'm sure that it'll be presented again. Change a part-time employee to full-time, and the plain fact of the matter is you've created such a hostile work environment that people won't even talk to each other. Some of your city employees won't even communicate with each other. To the council, why is the council failing to rein in an incompetent, vengeful leader? When will you step up and resume some courage and statesmanship? Why would you give your city checkbook to a man who has such a poor respect for the city's budget, for the city's monies? I look at him adding a tax on the utilities and reducing the cardroom taxes. This puts a burden on those of us who live on fixed incomes while relieving the expenses to an entity that has the ability to raise their rates and take care of it that way. Some other projects that were eliminated or reduced are the city movies, the Christmas pageant, the La Center Princess activities. The citywide garage sale, we've got one individual who puts in a great deal of time and effort to make that happen, brings hundreds, literally hundreds of people to the community to spend their dollars around town, and she can't get any support from the city. I see zero commercial development at the junction. There should be knocking on doors. The mayor and I have talked about this, and what I asked is who will finally recognize the vindictive action of putting a highly qualified finance director on paid leave? Who will make the motion to return the professional to active city duty? Or are you going to bring in another high dollar person to provide the oversight? Well, what I see is the fox in charge of the hen house here. I'm addressing the council, but in truth, my words are for the audience. We need to take charge of our city. It's a beautiful city, and we're not being well represented. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments this evening? Okay, Seeing none, we'll move on to ordinance resolutions and public hearings. This evening, we have a resolution 18-432 authorizing investment of Sela Center monies in the local government investment pool, and our consultant, Mr. Paul Lewis, will be presenting.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Center citizens. As the Mayor mentioned, Resolution 18-432 is an update to an authorization relative to the local government investment pool authority. In 2014, the city approved a resolution, an initial resolution, authorizing the city to participate in the local government investment pool, the LGIP. The LGIP is effectively a money market fund that a number of local governments participate in and is managed by the State Treasurer's Office. It has more than 500 participants, and at last count, the investment pool is $11.7 billion. So it's a large pool of investments. The current yield on that, the LGIP, is 1.47%. In contrast, the local banks are offering you less than 0.5%. So currently there's quite a bit of a higher yield for taking advantage of the local government investment pool. The city typically has about $2 million in the local government investment pool. Just to give you a reference, as I mentioned, at the end of the year you have about $12 million in other investments. The resolution in front of you authorizes the mayor as the authorized person, or designates the mayor as the authorized person for the LGIP, and it's just an update to the resolution that you passed back in 2014. Any questions?
Any discussion or questions from the council?
This is just refreshing an existing, updating an existing ordinance.
Yep.
No, I don't see anything.
If not, could I get a motion?
Mayor, I'll move to approve Resolution 18-432, designating the mayor as the city's authorized person for the local government investment pool.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 18-432, designating the mayor as the city's authorized person for the local government investment pool. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again, Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Council. So next on the agenda, we have a presentation from the city engineer, Mr. Cooper, for the bid award for the West 4th Street and Pacific Highway roundabout.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request to award the roundabout project at 4th Street and Pacific Highway to the responsible lowest bidder. In 2014, the city contracted with HHPR, an experienced firm that designs roundabouts, and they prepared the plans and specifications for the roundabout. The project is partially funded by the Regional Transportation Council through WashDOT and FHWA for an STPR grant. And in other words, it's an FHWA grant, but WashDOT does the contract administration for it, so we deal with them doing this. We got a grant for the amount of $692,000. The city also received a grant for the construction from the State Transportation Improvement Board for $680,930. On January 24th, the city advertised the project, and on February 28th opened bids, and there were 9 bidders. The lowest bid was from McDonald Excavating in the amount of $1,587,228. The contract requires that the contractor cannot start work until after May 1st, and there's 160 working days in the contract, and that is works out to be an estimated completion date of January 2019. The budget impact is for the STPR grant of $692,000 and the TIB grant of $680,930. That totals $1,372,930 for grants. The city's match cost in that would be $214,298, and that would be a total cost of $1,587,220 for the total cost of construction. Attached, I have the bid tab. There's a lot of numbers in here, but it shows that on the left, McDonald Excavating. McDonald Excavating was the low bidder on the left, and then as you work towards the right, all the rest of the bidders, it works to higher as you go to the right, up all the way up to $2.28 million for the highest bidder. So does anyone have any questions?
On that, can you go back to that dollar amount, please?
Yes.
Just scroll down. The 214,000 and change, is that real cash or is part of that your time?
That's going to be cash. We have to pay the contractor actually for that amount. We are required to do some match cost in there as well. So the actual cost of construction is actually $1,587,000. So we only got a grant for $1,372,000. So that is actual cash amount that'll have to be.
That's actual cash.
But there is a match that we have to the federal government and for the state. So there's some match cost in there that we have, but that actually is, that's really just that's actually dollar amounts that we'll have to pay the contractor. But to get the grant, we have a certain percentage that we have to participate in.
So the actual cost of the roundabout's more than $1,587,000?
No, that's an actual cost. The project cost, right, in the end, we have to match a certain amount above that to get that $1,372,000 in grant.
That's the cash amount.
Yeah,
I was trying to see where your time figured into that.
Right. My time and any consultant work, testing, surveying is going to be over and above that. We have a certain percentage of that. It's 13.5%. And then there's a TIB part of that, which can overlap. Those portions of match can overlap. So the project cost, that we have to match is part of that, but it's the total project cost is much higher because we have to match with the grant.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tony,
Yes.
a couple of questions. Looking at the bid tab. My background is not in construction, but I have to ask you, what is a stainless steel bird?
I
saw three lines of those on
here.
here.
Swans, and they were designed by a landscape architect as far as how they look.
Okay.
The pattern that we ended up coming up with was flying pattern where they're flying, they're landing, and they take off and fly again around. So it's just the stainless steel birds are going to be hand cut by a machinist that does this to a certain design that's shown on the plan, and then they're bolted to the side of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was something decorative or,
it's
or that was really something functional.
Is what they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question or comment. I've been approached by a citizen who has suggested that we refurbish the totem pole. It's now at Public Works, and we move that into the roundabout. I know he's had some discussions with you, and possibly with Director Sarvis. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Has there been any serious continuation of that discussion?
Yeah, Jeff probably has some knowledge on it. I know it's planned to refinish it and make it look better, but the actual place to put that, we're not sure yet. I don't know if the roundabout center is the best place, but there's probably other places that you can go.
I know who it is. He's mentioned it. That's as far as it's gone.
Yeah.
We brought that up at a meeting the other night too.
Same guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing what he needs to do. He's out lobbying.
So it's kind of, I take it's a dead issue.
No,
I mean the relocation to the roundabout?
The relocation of the totem pole, refinishing relocation is going to happen. I don't know that it's.
But for the roundabout,
we have
right?
not considered it as part of the roundabout.
Yeah.
at this time.
What do we have planned for the center of the roundabout?
Landscaping.
Oh, okay.
And it's particular landscaping because of the views that need to be blocked so you can't see across them and that sort of thing, but not block the New Phoenix sign. It's a lot of thought has kind of gone into that. So, and then minimal maintenance kind of stuff. So we're not spending a bunch of time taking care of things.
It's been a while since we reviewed that stuff. Was there a pedestal out there then for the block? Was it a 5 foot? I don't recall.
Yeah. There's around the wall, and because it's kind of on a slope, the wall's shorter on one side than it is the other, and then it's kind of burnished, and then it has the stainless steel thunders attached to it.
Okay, I'm trying to recall all the detail on that.
And then it has a few stone type pillars too.
Oh, yeah, it'll have stone, so it'll be a burnished, kind of a rust colored kind of steel around the wall. So you'll see the steel, and then you'll see these kind of pillars.
There might be pictures on the website.
Yeah.
We'll get some up there.
In fact, I think we have one somewhere. Yeah.
Well, the other thought I had was when we were having the discussions, it's been a year ago, I guess, was the idea of the trucks, because like the one that you get the off ramp there at Walmart, it changes colors. We didn't do that up here. Does it change colors, and do we have a ramp? I'm trying to remember the conversations.
It has a truck. It has a truck
override.
Yeah, it has a truck apron, and we've actually lowered it from what the standard is a little bit, just to accommodate the low boys a little easier. It's only 3 inches high now.
Okay.
The curve.
You talked about that.
Yeah, so it was.
Okay,
yeah.
I just wanted.
So there will be a truck
there we go.
apron for
There
trucks
we
to
go.
turn. Yeah.
That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah. That's kind of respectable. And that curve you see there is actually a roll curve. At the end of the truck apron. It doesn't look like that. It's a rolled kind of curve. Same way as up at the junction. Same type of curve, except we're going to have a different centerpiece.
And I did visit with the Public Works Director today. I think it'd be wise for us to when the ground is dug and they're running stuff out there, is to run a couple extra tubes out there. So if we ever decide to light that or whatever, that that I would encourage the council to agree now that we're going to put a couple of tubes under the ground to, if it's an additional cost, that's fine, but we should approve that, because if we decide to do something out there in the future, it'd be nice to have
for
the
lighting.
and they're going to dig the ditches. So.
Right. Well, and they're going to put irrigation in there, so there will be some other conduit that goes in there. So it's possible we can think about it.
Well, I'd certainly like to suggest to the council that we consider a nominal amount to make sure that we put
contingency money.
Yes, a little
No,
contingency.
it's already in there.
Okay, that seems to me.
Rhododendrons or weeping trees?
Some of it's maintenance. Cactus.
They're not rodents and trees.
Something with color.
Yeah, it would be nice to have color there, really would.
Is there a certain amount over which, for change orders, we would have to reapprove this, or do you have some wiggle room?
We'll have to get, since we have funding, 2 different funding sources, if there's any change order, I have to get approved by WashDOT and TIB for each change order.
John, what you're asking is, when does it come back to council?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering
We
how
have a
hard,
contingency of
to add conduits, how hard do we have to push this all?
No,
Right.
we will come back.
But we can get a cost from the contractor and just see what he would charge to do something like that.
Okay.
It might not be too much, but
Let's put data out there too, so we know if flash
Yeah,
movie sound.
dark fiber. I had a question about these, there's a couple cells in the bid comparison spreadsheet. I couldn't figure out why they were highlighted. Am I missing something?
Yellow?
Yeah.
Those were incorrect numbers that the contractors put in there. When I did the math, numbers were off, so I highlighted them, and it showed at the bottom what the actual cost was, and then below what they actually put down for a bid. But some of those their math was incorrect.
Oh.
That's why I ran it. That's where you ran a spreadsheet, so you figure out if anybody's
I have great
didn't
respect
multiply
for
right.
Fuzzy man.
those.
Yeah.
And one was way off.
Yeah,
By over
was a little off.
$100,000.
Yeah, it didn't matter because they were so high that they weren't even considered part of the.
$30,000 difference.
Yeah, well, there was, it's some math errors. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
Any other questions for Mr. Cooper? Okay, council discussion? Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
So if there is no discussion, could I have a motion to approve the bid award?
I make a motion to award the West 4th Street and Pacific Highway Roundabout project in the amount of $1,587,228 to McDonald Excavating Incorporated and authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to award the West 4th Street and Pacific Highway Roundabout project in the amount of $1,587,228 to McDonald Excavating and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. So that was the last item we had on the agenda for this evening. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for
Thanks,
attending this
everyone.
evening meeting.
Okay.